How's it going, everyone, and welcome to my top 10 games of 2017. This year was actually a really good year with some great games that came out, so I had a bit of a challenge in trying to rank them. Just a heads up though, I've not had a chance to play every game that came out. I've yet to try the new South Park game, Wolfenstein 2, and also the latest Xenoblade Chronicles, and there's some other games I've missed out on as well. However, let's get on with the top 10 games I've actually played this year. Sonic is one of my oldest video game memories. My first console was the Sega Master System, and I still play the original Sonic from time to time, speedrunning it here and there. The series reached a high point for me during the Mega Drive or the Genesis era, but since then it has been, well, disappointing to say the least. This has changed with Sonic Mania. A community-driven reimagining of the old style of Sonic games has brought around a title that stands out as one of the series' best. This is a classic throwback to the Genesis era of Sonic, with colourful levels full of twists, turns and obstacles to make the levels intense but also fair. Each stage mixes areas that you can zip through at classic Sonic speed, while elsewhere you also need to spend time to think which way is the correct path forward. Some of the early levels are so meticulously designed that the gameplay feels so naturally fluent, seamlessly flying and bouncing through different areas. The bosses are also unique. Some are flashbacks to other Sega games, while most require some sort of timing and concentration to figure out the best way past. All look stunning and creative, providing a decent challenge, and the soundtrack is an excellent backdrop to one of the best Sonic games in years. All in all, Sonic Mania is what Sonic should always be: fast, action-packed fun. I'll probably get a lot of flack for this, but it's hard to not have PUBG in my top 10, purely for the hours that I've played it this year. PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, or simply PUBG for most, is currently the most popular game on Steam, becoming the first to hit over 2.5 million concurrent players. Personally, I've never played any of these survival games, H1Z1 or DayZ or Rust, nothing like that, and when a friend got me to buy PUBG I was apprehensive. It's still in early access, so technically it hasn't actually been released this year. This has led the game to be a bit buggy.
What the fuck? What? I'll show you how to get up the stairs.
Help! I'm stuck in the brick.
But at its core, the game is pure fun, and even more so with a group of friends. Whether you want to land your team far away, loot up and play the long game, or dive in with the crowds and jump into a firefight straight away, there's an option for you. There's opportunity for huge plays and also for hilarious moments. Oh shit, he's bashing my bike.
What are you doing, CJ?
I'm fucking trying to move!
Get out, get out, get out, get out, go, go, go!
I'm not
Oh my
moving!
God, this is so dumb.
Well, I'm fucking stuck in you, I can't do anything! He's left an exploding bike on me. This is so AIDS. This game is dumb. That feeling when you finally win a game is great, and for its bugs and faults, it has been one of my most played games of 2017. I had no idea what NieR Automata was when it was released, so it didn't interest me in the slightest. But when a friend told me it had gameplay similar to Devil May Cry and Bayonetta, two game series that I really enjoy, I was convinced to give it a try. You control an android sent by humans to Earth after the planet has been taken over by aliens who use robots as a proxy to control it. Confused? Yeah, the game is definitely odd, and the story twists and turns from there on. My first time entering the theme park was admittedly one of the most surreal and strange experiences I've had in gaming this year. The game has gorgeous graphics, and a soundtrack that rivals most games this year for being one of the best. At its heart, it's an RPG, with collectibles, upgrades, and, being an android, upgrades to your person itself, to help you with melee or range fighting or even healing, and many different things as well. The combat itself is mostly melee based, with your robot friend assisting in some ranged gunfire, which is needed when you find yourself surrounded by hordes of enemies to fight through. On top of that, the boss battles are epic. The first pits you against a screen-filling giant robot with saws for arms. You fight it in many different modes, and this interchange is used a few times throughout the game, altering the style but keeping it that fast pace. It's hard to divulge more of the game without spoiling, but NieR Automata was one of my surprises of the year. A very pretty game that is deeper than it first appears to be. I love platforming games. 2D, 3D, you name it. I was raised on the likes of Mario, Sonic and a host of other characters bopping between different levels. For a while, however, the scene has been sparse in terms of games that count as true collectible platformers. I did a review earlier in the year on Yooka-Laylee, a game depicted as the spiritual successor to Banjo-Kazooie, another of my childhood favourites. However, it disappointed me, mostly with its execution and style of level design. Thankfully, we had a hat in time to save the day, another Kickstarter project trying to rekindle the collectathon style of games. The game itself is a cutesy, charming and chuckle-infested campaign that puts a smile on your face right from the start. It's almost as if Wind Waker and Super Mario Galaxy made a baby, with Mario Sunshine giving tips in the background. The controls and camera are tight and responsive, which allows perfectly seamless platforming across the different worlds, which are filled with different characters and enemies. They all have a personality. My favourite has to be the movie world, which at one point pits you as a detective to work out who a murderer on a train is. It's pure feel-good fun, and the humour will have you smiling as you attempt to pick up all the different items you're sent out in search for. Despite its cutesy exterior though, it holds some challenge, specifically the time rifts, which reminded me of the areas in Mario Sunshine that robbed you of your water jetpack, and it really put the intensity on the difficulty. As a platformer, it ticks all the boxes, and stands for me as one of the best platformers in recent years. I've loved Resident Evil ever since the remakes came out on GameCube. I managed to buy every game possible. The series took a turn away from survival horror with Resident Evil 4, which was heralded for its action-packed style of gameplay. Resident Evil 7 this year makes another turn, and it's back towards survival horror. The early stage, with its first-person camera and focus on hiding away from enemies, takes big nods to the Amnesia series of games. It's also, however, one of the strongest openings in a game this year, with the fear implanted early on while also coming face to face with your adversaries. The graphics, sound and enemies you face make it a truly terrifying experience. As the game progresses, we get more into the Resident Evil rhythm, with more weapons available, upgrades and also puzzles to solve. The style changes somewhat, with more firefights as you face different bosses. There's a Saw-like sequence, and the game ends with a more action-orientated phase. Despite the changes of pace throughout, this is a huge breakout for Resident Evil, outperforming the rather forgettable numbers 5 and 6. It's also a testament to the horror genre though, and how, despite the saturation of hide-and-seek games and zombies, it's still possible to scare the shit out of you. Life is Strange is one of my favourite games of all time, and if you haven't played it yet, you owe yourself to go for it. When I heard that a prequel was coming out, revolving around different characters with a different voice actor made by a different studio, I was worried. I shouldn't have been. Before the Storm keeps all of the passion and intensity of its predecessor and is able to hold a candle to it too. The game revolves around Chloe, 3 years before the instance of the original game. It gives an insight into how she became the person she has, what has happened to her and her thoughts and feelings after being separated from Max and losing her father. The main plotline is how she meets and becomes friends with Rachel Amber, another key figure from the original game. It finally gives a voice and some personality to a character we've heard a lot about, and it shows how their friendship bloomed from nothing into the huge deal it became. Before the Storm lacks the rewind mechanic, but replaces it with an argument minigame, which is more akin to Chloe's character.
Isn't it past your bedtime?
I don't sleep. It's for the weak.
Real cute.
The rest of the game is much the same, and it doesn't disappoint. The music is typically on point, even making a simple train ride into an epic moment. And it makes the rest of the game just as emotional, as you delve deeper into the psyche of the two main characters, how they grow, making it bittersweet when knowing how events will unfold 3 years later on. It's hard to put across how Before the Storm affects you, but if you play the original Life is Strange and want to flesh out the backstory, this game is necessary for your collection. Cuphead arrived out of nowhere for me. People labelled it as a cartoony Dark Souls due to its apparent difficulty, which intrigued me. However, it's probably more similar to older bullet hell games like Ikaruga and Radiant Silvergun. A lot has been said about the graphics and it's hard to ignore. The style is fantastic, offering a 1930s classic theme. The characters are all wonderfully animated, with brilliant expressions and the ability to clearly telegraph what moves are about to come your way. The difficulty is undoubtedly there. You will die a lot playing this game, but a competent gamer will learn each time they lose, see the weaknesses in their enemies, and eventually move on to the next level. The game itself revolves around boss fights, all with different stages and varying difficulty and styles of approach. Once I had started, I couldn't put it down. The ability to pick up, try again on a boss was too addictive to stop. It's a great feeling to come up against a difficult opponent and finally beat it after numerous attempts. Oh, that little thing, if I hadn't have killed him I was dead. Easy. All in all, the game took me around 10 hours to complete, but after that opens up the challenge of trying to beat all the stages with the elusive S rank. The competition aspect is there and drives this game, but it was the graphics and gameplay that made this one of my favourite games of the year. The rise of more Metroidvania games recently has been evident. We've had Ori and the Blind Forest in 2015, which has a gorgeous art style and smooth controls, while this year saw a remake with Samus Returns landing on the 3DS. However, the current king has to be Hollow Knight, which came out at the start of 2017 and absolutely blew me away. As with all Metroidvania games, the way you progress is up to you, with different paths through the huge number of areas on offer. The combat is simple, and yet the vast array of enemies all offer up a different challenge. The difficulty is there. This isn't an easy game by any means, but the way you approach it is up to you. The art style is quite simply phenomenal. It's crisp and clean, the characters all boast personality and individuality, whilst the areas all carry around visual signposts to make it clear where you are. You wading through grass? You're probably in green path. Surrounded by walking mushrooms? That's the fungal wastes for sure. Struggling to see amidst all the giant insects? Yeah, unfortunately you're in Deep Nest. The pinnacle for me are the boss fights. Most have individual abilities to avoid, some of which you claim from them afterwards, but all are visually stunning to play. My favourite has to be the Mantis Lords, which boasts my favourite piece of the amazing soundtrack. Overall, Hollow Knight is an exemplary game and is a testament and, for me, a benchmark for other Metroidvania games to aim for from now on. I'll be honest with you, Mario games have always been some of the best, most enjoyable games I've played in my life, but Odyssey did not appeal to me at first. The idea of a throwable hat that controlled things, I felt it was a bit of a gimmick that was going to be tacked on. I'm an idiot. Mario Odyssey is the best platformer to have been released for years and reaches the heights set by Galaxy a decade ago. Visuals aren't what Mario games are known for or even focus on, but the game is a delight on the eyes and the different areas all look distinctive and interesting compared to each other. The controls are spot on. Controlling Mario is as easy and precise as ever, allowing for all sorts of platforming shenanigans to take place. The big showman is Cappy, who you can throw onto other things to take control of them. These range from being a fish, allowing you to swim underwater with ease, to being a T-Rex and smashing through everything in your path. The best thing is that it feels natural. After the first few times you begin to wonder how you've not played like this before. It adds a whole new level of depth to the game, which has all sorts of secrets and extras to make each world interesting. Instead of stars or shines, you're now collecting moons, and there's a lot of them. There's 880 in total, with the ability to boost that to a cap of 999. And while some are easier to get than others...
Easy first moon.
The challenge for a lot of them is there, and you won't rest until you've searched every nook and cranny for them all. The game isn't the most difficult of the year, but with practice and expertise you can pull off moves and skips that show a true mastery of the game. It's been 7 years since the last full 3D Mario game, and I have to say Odyssey was worth the wait. Other than Odyssey, I have to say the lineup on Switch this year has been pretty meh so far. There's some great games, Mario Kart 8, Pokken and Splatoon 2 to name a few, but they are just ports or upgrades from the Wii U versions I already owned. Thankfully, the console is also home to my #1 game of the year, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. It's difficult to put into words just how immense Breath of the Wild is, as describing it as just another entry into the Zelda series doesn't do it justice. It takes the classic Zelda formula, throws on some extras, and then shakes it up beyond belief. Many have compared the game to Skyrim, and that isn't too far from the truth. The game takes on a much more RPG style approach, with crafting and cooking and money management much more key to your progression. The scale of the game is also comparable. Breath of the Wild is huge, roughly 1.5 times bigger than the map of Skyrim. But it's not sparse. Every nook and cranny is filled with shrines, temples and big enemies to fight, all which provide a reward if you collect and defeat every possible one in the game. There's also a number of Koroks hiding in the map too, which give up a seed when found, which eventually allows you to increase the size of your carrying capacity. And there's a total of 900 available. Quantity doesn't always mean quality though, but Breath of the Wild has ditched the normal dungeon formula for a more spread out style. There are only 4 dungeons in the game. In reality, most of the action takes place inside the shrines, which hold tough enemies or intricate puzzles to solve. The dungeons themselves are unique to the Zelda series too. Link is able to manipulate them whilst inside of them, as part of the problem solving, and vary between a water spouting elephant or a lightning summoning camel. However, the biggest thing for me in this game is the freedom. There is no order or path to follow. You are free to approach the game as you choose. Other than the original starting area, which introduces Link's new abilities using the Sheikah Slate, none of it is compulsory. You can spend hundreds of hours collecting every single Korok seed and finding every lost memory. Or, you can run straight to Ganon and try to fight him with nothing in hand. I've never experienced this amount of freedom before, and whilst most games attempt to offer a no strings attached approach, this is a first. I'm a massive Zelda fan, so for many of you this decision probably comes as no surprise, but Breath of the Wild has really reached a new height for me, and I'm thankful Nintendo took that gamble and made the game in a totally new way to the classic Zelda style, for it's resulted in this masterpiece. Thanks for watching guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think and also share your own games of the year in the comments. Take care and I'll see you next time.